Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 19th, and well, we're still within that little negative reading here as we see continued short interest rising. But you know what? As much as it's risen all the way up here to the plus 7.5, not producing much of a downdraft, and it's not going to really do that. You hear a lot of headwind talk, but the reality is we're basically in control mode until people can figure out what's going to happen as of January 20 noon. And until that takes place, I think you're going to see more of the same action. You might even get a little upside bias as the potential for some excitement, but sort of like a pre-Fed announcement kind of situation. We have a slowly resetting shakeout. In fact, if we look at the ES, you can see this, we're almost oversold. When we look at the long-term buyer here set up as well, we're already there from midterm buyers and short-term buyers starting to pop back up. I wouldn't be surprised to see them press back through as sort of a pre-trade going forward. Just a simple, escalation. They're just waiting for details and whether or not there's going to be significant action early on. It's one thing to talk, it's another thing to actually produce results, particularly when it comes to tax cuts and things like that. So I know a lot of that's been on hold, and I think that's some of what you can read in from Trump's comments. He's not going to give his hand away before he's actually sworn in. So we can see the Dow, complete reset of the shakeout, actually has moved negative. Shorts, slightly higher within that configuration. Not as oversold, though, as the other markets, simply because it had a much more robust move. It is interesting to note that you're not getting a whole lot of earnings changes on the S&P and that, and I think that there is going to be a lag between the anticipation of things and the actual result, and something we talked about the other day. Euro, again, mentioned this before, that as much as they were going to try and float this thing to move it up, at the end of the day, you're looking at bigger U.S. growth, higher rates, and the EU not going in the same direction is going to continue to put pressure on there, not to mention the exuberance of Trump to want to establish side deals with Britain, and that it's going to continue to put pressure on the Eurozone. Problematic. Also, this is a ridiculous one. The bump here, interest rates are going to be rising. There's just no question. The market forces that are going to exist. I know it's a concern for the Fed, and obviously even Trump mentioned the dollar being too strong, but you're not going to be able to stop that when outsized growth in the U.S. is going to outpace the rest of the world. Relatively speaking. Obviously, it's an interesting one from a geopolitical standpoint, because I know that China is, in the Trump administration view, probably more problematic simply because their economy is larger. So it makes sense to cozy up towards Russia and really put pressure on that alliance with China. Couple that with, pressuring the EU, which from a business standpoint, Trump sees as a threat rather than an alliance from a business standpoint. It's kind of a twofold thing, and I think a lot of people are missing it. Now you couple that in with oil, which I've been telling you, there's nothing they can do about the supply. OPEC is in a world of hurt when it comes to this situation, because at certain price levels, shale is going to ramp up at will. Now, fine, you've had a small drawdown in crude oil, but these huge inventories, it's going to take a long time for them to absorb, and the only way they're going to get absorbed is through economic growth. That's the only way you're going to see these rise, and that poses a whole new dynamic and also opportunities. Gold is going to continue to rise, no question in my mind about that one. So while you expect TLT is going to take a hit, you can also see that China, preparing for some difficulties as they continue to liquidate treasuries. They're also having to put tons of liquidity into their markets, and if they have any headwinds from the Trump administration, it's going to pose problems for China growth, which I think in some quarters isn't going to be seen as a bad thing, but it's going to cause some difficulties from a global standpoint. Now, the ES, here we go, looking at it. You can see we've had the nice turn from the color. We had the brief dip down right there. It wasn't a whole lot of anything. Reset started its climb back up, and at this early stage with the rising gold color here, and also the blues. Not quite ready for a turnaround to the downside yet, per what we look for on some of the adapted short signals. A little premature. You got to see the brown actually turn to flat and start to beginning to fade to get any decent downdraft. So kind of in a stasis point at this particular point. I think that probably we're going to see a little bit more action to the upside as we continue to get closer. We're down to a day plus, and I think that inside trade of pre-positioning is going to start to take place. The reality is they're all looking to see exactly what those first executive orders, whether there's going to be agreement in Congress on some of these proposed stimulus and that. Until it actually gets closer to a finalization, I think that there's still some trepidation. But there's a big curve differentiation between some of the expectations and what's actually on the ground, and so I think that's going to have to get resolved, and that could add to our volatility, which is something we've talked about all along. I think the China interaction is probably going to be one of the more interesting ones, simply going forward, because the viewpoint is going to be America versus the world from an economic growth standpoint, and that is going to really upset the apple cart, given that we've had pretty much universal, no growth and pretty weak policy for the last decade as far as wanting to move that forward, and so that's kind of be a pretty dramatic change. Now, how that's absorbed by the Fed, and that is really going to be the interesting one. And are they going to be at conflict, or are they going to be in synergy with the administration on some of these things? And I think that's what really we have to focus on from a macro standpoint. It's going to reflect itself intraday as well as in our daily, as we start to see a turnaround from the oversold into a new bot, and then that 2350 target I was talking about for quite a while, as we've met every one of these benchmarks going forward. I don't think there's any question that we're going to continue to be on the right side of the trades. So it's exciting stuff. As always, though, continue to elaborate on some of these macro issues and how they're going to impact certain segments, so that you stay on top of it and weed through some of the ridiculousness that you're seeing on the news and that, because I think that they just really miss a lot of it, and it's just surprising because it seems rather obvious. But then again, a lot of these trades have seemed obvious to me and not so much to the market. Anyway, that's just part of what we get to see that some others just for some reason don't, and that's okay. Everyone has a different paradigm. Trade well. We will talk again through the day. Have a good one.